In this video, I will try to comment on thoughts by Jung, Carl Gustav Jung, that we find in Psychology and Alchemy. And I know myself to be what Hegel calls reason, namely the singular consciousness which knows to be the whole of reality. And I believe that we, wherever there's a we need a collective therapy, and I need a therapy. And I will comment the 9 steps brought forth by Jung when he says that in the treatment of psychotherapy, the therapy comes from the ancient Greek. It means the cult, and also the healing, and the psyche is also an ancient Greek word. It means the soul. So a psychotherapy, a psychotherapeutical process, is a process of healing the soul. And he says that within the process, one can find a purpose, an end goal, and it can happen in 9 steps, and I will comment each of them. The first is after the subject has received a good piece of advice. And in my intellectual and spiritual development, I have received very good pieces of advice from figures of consciousness on the internet, or from books that I've read, or from songs that I've listened to. And my whole intellectual and spiritual development consists in having incorporated within my worldview the good pieces of advice that living individuals have given me, or without knowing me, or with knowing me sometimes, and also dead individuals through their thoughts, their works being made manifest in the books that they left behind. So yeah, and this is an example. That's Carl Gustav Jung. This book that I'm just starting to read is an example of a piece of advice that Carl Gustav Jung, is not among us anymore, but his ideas live on, and they are a good piece of advice for me. Second step, after a confession more or less complete has occurred. So to confess your own evil is even if you do it only partially, it's already a first step towards solving the problem. So I am what Hegel calls the negative, and in August 2018, when I had my God experience, I retreated within myself, and I believed that the world was my world, and that the purpose for me was to enjoy myself in the world. And I wanted to meet a person with whom I was spiritually connected, and I wanted to prove to her that we were one spirit, and I wanted to meet her. And yeah, so I retreated within myself, and I abandoned the world in a way. So this act is explained in Hegel's philosophy, and in Jakob Böhm, it's evil. It's the son of light, Lucifer in mythology, who draws inward and rejects the whole and thinks only of himself. So yeah, I can confess that. Then we must recognize and acknowledge and accept the content of a psychic or a psychical, not psychological, but psychic content, which was then unconscious or subconscious, but it's unconscious, but is nonetheless essential, and must give a new vital step, a new burst of spiritual progress to the activity of the subject once he has become aware of that. And I am starting to understand. I understood it when I had my God experience in 2018, that the deep state and the scheming manipulators who control high finance and politics, and who are um, having a making a conspiracy, the idea of conspiracy theories. I understood broadly that they were a manifestation of my subconscious, and um, I must acknowledge that all the evils that I see in the world are mirrors of my own inner evil, and that is the first step to acknowledge that whatever happens in reality is a projection of my own inner darkness. Just by saying the words, it's a first step toward objectifying it and making, not making peace, but it's the first step to say, I cannot deny that the evil in the world is a reflection of my own evil. It's the most difficult thing. It's the most difficult task, and yeah. But I must first acknowledge this, and then uh, uh, detachment from the psyche of childhood must be brought forth, must be achieved through a prolonged and long psychological work. I must acknowledge that there are traumas and scars and burnings in my childhood, and I have understood, but I understood that during my intellectual process, that the greatest trauma of my childhood, which overall was very happy, but I have one wound, is that I lacked the presence of my father. And I said in previous video that through my intellectual development in my 20s, as of now, this empirical individual is 29 years old, but when I, between 24 and 26 or 7, I admired men. I made a video of the list of the men that this individual, this empirical individual has admired during his intellectual journey, and they were all more or less psychopaths, because I have understood that I needed a strong father figure, because that's what I had not in my childhood, and I suffered from the loss of my father, and my whole intellectual and spiritual development has consisted in finding in strong masculine father-like figures to find the father that I had needed and that I had lacked, and I understood that. Yeah, so that's another step in the process of making peace with my own wounds and my own scars and uh, my own my own problems. Uh, then there's a new adaptation, a rational adaptation to conditions of life, which may be difficult or exceptional. And my view of things is to wash away the difficulty of existence by rationally understanding them. I am a Spinozian and a Hegelian in the sense that I have the belief that through a cognitive, rational understanding of things, one can dissolve evil, not pain, not suffering, but evil. And my purpose is to bring about a full rational explanation of reality, to remove the feeling of sins from men. I want to rationally prove that men are not free, that only God is free, so that all men are innocents. It doesn't remove the pain, it doesn't remove the suffering, though it might alleviate the psychological suffering, but at least it removes the feeling of guilt and shame. And by uh, by producing a rational speech which encompasses the whole of reality, my purpose is to remove shame and guilt from human beings and to bring this onto myself, not as a human, because the burden would be too heavy to bear, but as God, simply as God. And this process of the whole conceptual understanding of reality is the process of the path towards godhood, so that there's a dialectical link between what Hegel calls the negative and Christ, because the negative is dialectically forced to become Christ as a principle in order to save himself and to bring about the salvation of God, the salvation of mankind, and the salvation of himself. So that's a dialectical process, and I am chained. I have no other choice but to go full into my logical path, and yeah. After the disappearance of the painful symptoms, so the purpose of the journey of the soul is to overcome the painful symptoms, there can be a positive turnaround of destiny, and this is connected. And the hope that I have in my position is that something positive can spring forth from my own negativity. If I cannot bring the positive to mankind and to God and to myself, if I am just negative, I would not be able to sustain anything. I need to believe that my negativity, my darkness, my wickedness, my selfishness, my evil can bring about good. And hopefully Hegel was right, because he says that the purpose of the negative is to bring about the positive, because one cannot exist without the other. So I have a belief in this logical determination that the negative is only the negative of the positive, and they are in a conceptual unity. So I hope that this speculative logical consideration of things is correct, and that my negativity is logically connected to the positivity. I hope, because yeah. Then there can be a change after the rediscovery of the belonging to a religious confession, a religious church, not in the sense of the physical building, but a religious community or religious faith, or after having been converted. And I was converted to Hegelianism, and to Hegelianism. And the ninth step is to draw, to make the drawings, the vague plan, to build, to structure a practical philosophy of life, which means to live your ideas, to embody your ideas. And my way of embodying my own ideas is to try to produce a rational speech of reality, to try to transform all my experiences into thoughts, which of course, because of the limitations of this empirical individual, it's a very difficult thing to do. But I try to extract what is universal, what is true, what is logical out of my daily experience. I try to connect the dots between all the phenomena, and every time that I am confronted by something negative, I try to remind myself that it is just a projection of my own negativity, and I try to accept it as being a manifestation of myself, and I try to remain stoic while knowing that I will fail in the process, because I'm not yet strong enough to bear the burden of all the negativity which will come at me. But I try, with my limited capabilities, to remain stoic, and even more than that, to accept the negativity, and to be thankful for the negative, for enabling me uh, to reveal my inner light, which I know I possess in part. I possess an inner light, and without this belief, I would collapse. So I need this belief in me. So yeah, and I just put a link to a song down below, and if you're interested in what I have to say, you can listen to the song, and it expresses my state of mind, or the state of my soul at this moment. So yeah.